It's been 5 months since the Eaton Fire tore through Altadena, and in that time, the recovery has been slow, emotional, and uncertain. In this episode of Altadena After the Fire, we will take you inside a powerful live town hall hosted by our partner station, KBLA Talk 1580 in Los Angeles, where community members, legal experts, and local leaders came together to talk about what happened, what hasn't, and what still needs to be done. This is a raw and honest conversation about resilience, accountability, and the right to rebuild, told by the people living it every day. And in this continuing episode of Altadena After the Fire, we will take you inside a powerful live town hall hosted by our partner station, KBLA Talk 1580 in Los Angeles. This is Altadena After the Fire.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to thank Ash Level, Joel Bryant, Martin Gordon, and attorney Crystal Nix Hines, and of course James Farr. And welcome up my colleague, Dr. Nicquetta Corde. I'm leaving you in very capable hands. Let's give a big round of applause to our panel. And on behalf of KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dominique DiPrima, passing the mic to Dr. Nicquetta Corde, literally passing the mic. Please welcome him.
If the panel could please come to the stage. Left to right, Veronica Jones, Brandon Lamar, Dr. Williams, and Jeffrey Buzzell. And James Farr, please stay on the end. Good evening, everyone. You are listening to KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicquetta Corde, your host for this hour. Let me first start off by just saying I'm not my brother's keeper. I'm my brother. I'm not my sister's keeper. I am my sister. I think the panelists that we have assembled today understand that. They live that. And I'm really proud that KBLA Talk 1580 is here to have this very critical conversation. The Altadena Eaton Fire, 100 days and counting. To the beloved community, we are here. We ain't going nowhere. While some of the other news outlets may have come and gone, we are committed to this. We are committed to you. And with that, I want to welcome our distinguished panel. Please raise your hand. Veronica Jones, president of the Altadena Historical Society. Brandon Lamar, the president of the NAACP Pasadena. Dr. Isha Williams, a licensed marriage and family therapist. And Jeffrey N. Buzzell with Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. Welcome. And you all know my colleague, James Farr. Oh, yeah. Have you met him? Yeah. Are you tapped in? Have you downloaded the KBLA app to listen to him live on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific? Conversations Live, Altadena Rising. That is our show of record, and we are so proud of him and proud of that show. And with that, I want to jump right on in, and I want to start with Dr. Williams. As a licensed marriage and family therapist, I'm sure you've heard a lot from your clients and the community. For folks in the room and those listening across the country, can you tell us what pains Altadenians the most 100 days after this tragedy of epic proportion, and what needs to happen in order for this community to heal?
Thank you for having me. I think one of the things that pains us most is that it happened, right? So as we look at what the lives that we built and the lives that we expected to carry on, I don't think any of us in this room, watch it on TV, living in Altadena, would have imagined that when you left your house that you wouldn't be able to go back. Most of us left with very little, if anything. So as we think about what it means to rebuild, when we think about taking care of ourselves and our mental health and our physical health, those are the things that pain the most because we didn't expect to have to do it. So as we think about the rebuild and moving forward, then we sit in a place where we are really confused. The last panel talked about how do you find fairness in individuals that are going to support you and not cheat you in this process when we feel cheated because of the fire as a whole. So part of the way is to not do this alone. Ask for the support that you need, and if you can't ask for support, ask your neighbor how you can support them, and then show up in that way. So as we think about, right, our experiences, we have to learn to grieve it in the moment, because if we don't grieve it in the moment, it comes back over and over and over again. We think about a way through the experience and not get over it. Don't let it go. But think about your way through. What does it mean to walk through this experience and to do it in a way that is connected and collaborative with other individuals that have also experienced this?
Thank you for that. You know, it's not lost on me that 2 weeks after the Eaton Fire, hundreds of folks gathered right here at Robinson Park Recreation Center for Dina Love Day. By show of hands, how many people were here when that happened? Raise your hand up high. And how many of you felt seen on that day? How many of you feel seen right now? For our folks that are listening, for folks who are streaming, most of the room's hands are not raised. Even after all of the investment that's gone into supporting folks in Altadena, folks aren't feeling the love. I have a feeling we have been here before. And with that, I want to transition to Veronica Jones, who is the president of the Altadena Historical Society. She's lived in this area for the last 60 years. And she said that she and her husband, Douglas, are among the black families who chose to raise children in West Altadena because it's the kind of place where neighbors look out for neighbors. Veronica, how do you recreate this sense of community 60 years in the making? Where do you start?
I don't think we have to recreate it. I think it's still here. It hasn't left. What we have to do is make sure it stays here. We have not. The black community has not left. It is still here. Our heart is still here. Our soul is here in Altadena. I live in the kind of neighborhood that if I have a lemon tree, I make lemonade and give it to my neighbor. So I live in that neighborhood, and it is still there, and we are going to be here. And I am the first black president of the Altadena Historical Society. When I joined 4 years ago, most of the history there, 99%, was all white. Even though we had Martin Luther King come up to Altadena, we have Ellen Garrison Clark buried in the Mountain View Cemetery in Altadena, the daughter of slaves. We had none of that in our archives. And I'm here to make sure that we get all that, all those hidden histories and all those things that will keep us here in Altadena and make us strong and never be forgotten.
Just as a follow-up, Veronica, we heard a little bit about this in the first panel, about the amount of resources that have been raised to support the community of Altadena. Over $55 million has been raised to support long-term recovery efforts by the Eaton Fire. Folks like Pasadena Community Foundation being the recipient of those funds. GoFundMe's raised $200 million for LA fire victims, including Altadena. I've got to ask you, how has the Altadena Historical Society benefited from that? And what partners are you working with inside and outside of the region?
Okay, we have benefited from it. We have, first I want to say, I was amazed that people didn't know that black people lived in Altadena. I was like, where have you been? I've been here. We've been here. I've been here 61 years. What do you mean this is new to you and you don't know? But as a historical society usually works on a budget of about $45,000. And what it is, it archives history of Altadena. So we're an archive, not a museum. We have received over $100,000 and is specifically marked to archive Black history in Altadena. So we have been the recipient of it, and I am there to make sure that it's used to archive that Black history. We've been approached by USC and UCLA to partner with us to get that Black history in our archives. And the Altadena Historical Society is 90 years old this year. So 90 years from now, people will read about this fire. They will see the Black people. They will see our resilience in how we made it through the fire, and we're still here.
Next, I want to go to Jeffrey Buzzell over at Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. Jeffrey, it's been reported by the LA Times that LA County will set aside $3 million to help owners of fire-damaged homes test their soil for lead. We know the county is now shouldering the responsibility of contaminant testing because, as the Times has reported, the federal government has opted to break from a nearly 2-decade tradition of testing soil. Set the scene for us. Can you describe the Eaton litigation landscape right now?
Sure. Thank you. I want to say first off that I echo everything that my partner Crystal has said. I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to be part of a team that's able to help this community. This area is deeply personal to me. I'm a resident of the San Gabriel Valley. My son has played baseball in that field right out there. And we've had many classmates and friends and others that have been deeply impacted by the fire and lost their homes. So we really are appreciative of the opportunity to talk. And, to the extent anybody wants help, we're more than happy to help. Right now, because of the 6,600 homes that have been lost, the overall 9,000 structures that have been lost, there have been filed at this point about 200 litigations in LA Superior Court, filed by various individuals, not class actions, as my partner said, but individual actions that have been filed to recover damages for the Eaton Fire from Southern California Edison. And as we've talked about, the goal of those cases is to make sure that people in this room and other people in Altadena are made whole if possible, to recover those damages that are uninsured, to recover those emotional harms that have been done by the negligence of Southern California Edison. We've filed a number of complaints on behalf of our clients already. Our complaints, as well as some of the others, allege a number of various theories of liability. They include things like failure to shut off the power. We've talked about that. Should they have shut off the power when the lines were potentially at risk by high winds? Yes, they should have, in our view. And so what caused the fire in those winds? Well, that's still under investigation. That's part of what's going on right now. But the leading theories are one of a couple. One is that some equipment on the transmission towers up in Eaton Canyon failed. There was a flashover. Electricity went where it shouldn't, and hot molten materials fell to the ground and started a fire. The other one's a little more complicated. There's anyone who knows the Eaton transmission lines up knows there's a short little dead transmission line up there that was decommissioned many, many years ago. Unfortunately, when there are electric lines transmitting high voltages nearby, those electric lines can induce a current in a dead line, actually create electricity in a dead line. And if those towers are not properly grounded, they can cause sparks and high winds and start fires. So right now in the litigation, we're very early on. Many more complaints will be filed, but the court is right now in the process of doing what's called a coordination proceeding. All of these individual actions have been brought together in one place before one judge, and a series of orders are being put together so that it's orderly and efficient to get remediation of the wrongs as quickly as possible. Over the next, unfortunately, it will probably take years, not months, but over the next period of time, there'll be some discovery. We'll continue to investigate the issues with Southern California Edison. We'll ask them for information. We'll get more information from them. And then eventually, there will either be a trial or a mediation, which we've heard about before. And the mediation is an important part of the process if that happens. But what we'd like to do for anybody who's in this room and is interested in talking to us about it is to make sure that everyone is prepared. Crystal talked about the importance of asserting your rights, but there's naturally, for non-lawyers, there's always a fear of doing that for various reasons, one of which may be just fear of the process. And so to the extent that anybody's interested in having a discussion about what that means and what they might expect over the course of the next year or two if they decide to litigate, we're happy to answer those questions afterwards.
Just in reaction to that, I can only imagine what people are thinking and feeling, hearing you say the quiet part out loud, that this could take years, not months. And I just want to quickly go right back to Dr. Williams, our licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm processing that as you shared that. I'm sure so many people are processing that. Dr. Williams, you have a personal story of survival. Your family lost 7 homes in the fire. As you hear Jeffrey lay that out, how are you, as a trained marriage and family therapist, how are you processing that?
So as my family, myself, my two of my sisters and my mother all lost our homes. My godmother lost her home. Friends and family and the closest people to me. We are a community. So my neighbors, looking at one right here, right? I count all of those. I don't just count the ones that are blood related to me. So we as a community lost our homes. We lost our family in that unit. So as I think about it, I approach it as a person first and a professional second. So the person in me is devastated. The professional shows up every day for somebody else who is devastated. And I put myself aside, but with empathy, continue to show up for others. So to think that it's going to take years to rebuild my person, that makes me very sad. But I know that with support, we can get through that. Right? So I vacillate between the two of those, and I just kind of go back and forth where I know as a professional that there is hope and there is support, and I lend that to other people. But I first got to pick myself up, lend it. So we start inner first, and then we work outer. And you can't do it without building up this inner person to lend a hand to support someone else outside of myself and outside of my family. But it's hard to hear. And I don't want you to have to say it, but I don't want you to lie to me either, right? Because we need to know and understand the scope and the magnitude of exactly what we are facing. Because if I know it's going to take 2 years, I'm not going to plan for 2 months, right? I get to have the real conversation where we as a community plan 2 years out. Quarter by quarter by quarter, day by day, moment by moment, second by second, so that I'm not under any misconception that this is going to happen for me in less time than what it might actually take, right? Reality. We got to live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle. If it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did. Be angry, but only stay there for a moment because that's a land that will trap you. And you can go into depression or you can go into anxiety. Let's all get to understanding really quickly so that we can get to coping, so that we can actually be a loss manager and manage the loss that we have incurred.
Thank you for that, Dr. Williams. And for those that are listening, for those that are just streaming, you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. This is our special town hall. It's our town hall. It's the Altadena Eaton Fire 100 Days and Counting. People are streaming across the country and around the world. This was and continues to be one of the biggest stories happening around the world. With that, I want to go to Brandon Lamar, the president of the NAACP Pasadena chapter. Brandon, speaking of leaning into the reality, I've been reading, I'm sure a lot of folks have been reading and living this reality of going back and forth between insurance companies and FEMA and the LA County Department of Public Health and California Department of Insurance, not getting the clarity that they need and sometimes feeling dejected. For our national audience, what else are we missing about the breadth and depth of this catastrophe? And considering NAACP's work on the ground in places like Flint, in places like Jackson, Mississippi, and places like Asheville, North Carolina, what lessons should our fellow Americans learn from the scope of this tragedy?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I think one of the things that before we actually talk about what happened, we actually have to talk about how we got here in the first place. Redlining, the displacement of black and brown families from the 710 stub and the 210 stub, not allowing African Americans to be able to get loans from banks to buy homes in certain areas in Pasadena or on the east side of Altadena. And so I think before we have the conversation of where we are now, we have to have those conversations of systemic racism, of how we got here in the first place. Not only that, but we also have to talk about the infrastructure of how West Altadena didn't even get the notifications to evacuate in time. We also have to talk about the infrastructure of how, yes, we're talking about Edison, but also the gas company left the gas on for 3 days. So when we talk about homes on fire, homes were just not on fire. Homes was actually blowing up. And I saw it with my own eyes because I drove up there every day looking at homes still ablaze as there's nothing there but a pipe and a fire. And so I think those are the things that we really have to talk about is how in the world, I'm watching my language because number one, I'm an associate pastor, but then number two, we on live. So I'm watching my language.
Yes, we are.
Because it's been one of those seasons. But I think number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this, right? We paid for this. And this was an area where it was the only place for us to be, right? For a very long times. And not only everybody didn't have to pay that price, right? Some people moved up there because they actually saw people that looked just like them in the neighborhood. And so I think when I think about those things, for me, it's I have to tell the truth. But I also have to make sure that our community understands the truth and understand that at the same time, and I keep saying it, that disasters don't discriminate. Recovery does. And that has been happening within our community. Recovery has been discriminating into our communities. And it didn't just stop here. You mentioned some other disasters. It's been happening throughout history. So you want to talk about where the money is? We can trace the money all day long and everything like that. I was on a panel, I'll make this quick. I was on a panel with mayors, the African-American mayors across the United States, and we were talking about disasters and all these big-time names, Wells Fargo and all these, any big-time company you could think of, Amazon, all these people were in the room talking about how many millions of dollars that they're getting. And when the mic came to me, I said, thank you. But I can't congratulate you because we ain't seen it. We have not seen it. If we continue to put people, literally, Ash, who was just up here, she's being nice, y'all. But Ash actually been driving through Altadena, finding families that are living in tents on their lots. and calling me saying, Brandon, we got to get them housed in tents on their lots. This is what's happening in our community. And the truth of the matter is, if we don't keep the spotlight here, it's going to be ignored. It will be ignored, and we will have to repeat history. But as long as Brandon has breath in his body, it's not happening. So hopefully I answered your question, but sometimes I go on a rant.
You did all right. You more than answered the question.
My family has been here for a very long time. My grandparents started their church in Altadena. I went to Edison Elementary, Elliott. And so when I get goosebumps and I start talking, because I actually knew all of my neighbors and they know my name and I couldn't do no wrong because they knew my grandparents were pastors. And when I actually have to think about that probably won't be so anymore. Because the truth of the matter is, we're saying Altadena is not for sale, but guess what? It's selling every day. And it's not being sold by people locally. International buyers are coming into our community, taking up our land. So what are we doing about it? You talk about legislation? Let's talk about legislation from stopping international buyers and corporate people from buying up land and property in Altadena. And not only that, but let's talk about these undercover wolves that are not from our community, that don't have corporations, but they buying up land as well. So that's another one of my rants. I'm gonna be quiet. Sorry, y'all.
No, I mean, let's give Brandon a hand. I caught it, Brandon. I mean, just as you were sharing that, I'm thinking, how much have we heard about this sale of TikTok? And this fear that, we're going to sell TikTok. TikTok has to be sold to an American company, right? Because it can't be held in the hand of the Chinese, right? But yet and still, we allow real estate to be purchased. Lots of real estate to be purchased by foreign buyers, right? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. James Farr, host of Conversation Live on KBLA Talk 1580, Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, Sundays at 12 noon. Conversations Live, Altadena Rising. You have been on the ground here from the very beginning. For our audience that's just sort of tuning in or coming up for air, what's the most important thing you want folks to know right now, 100 days out from this tragedy? You've been talking to a lot of people, sorting out a lot of information, separating the fact from the fiction. What's that one thing that's just not quite translating that you want our audience to know?
The one thing that I really want them to know, Doc, is that there is not a picture. There's not a video. There's nothing that anyone can tell you until you've actually been on the ground and you've stood in the steps of where someone's home. I recall going early out and I saw a bucket of water and a soda pop, right? And all I could imagine was that homeowner's last defense. That was the last stand that they could make. And then understanding how that fire tracked from east to west and understanding the wind tunnels that kind of sucked it to the west, and then actually processing the guilt of why didn't my neighborhood burn also. I want people to know that this community is one of the best GD communities that I can think of. I can say that, can't I, Tavis? Okay. That people love each other here, right? I see so many faces here that have allowed my wife and I and our children to be nurtured and groomed and raised and cultivated and chastised. And I feel like sometimes I am an immigrant here, right? Like I have to fill out a visa form every year because somebody from this community gonna press me on my credentials. And I hope that I show up each time to get my stamp to say that I am here with you. I love you. And to answer your question, Doc, that's Altadena. That's Pasadena. They love hard. They fight even harder. Very tribal. But if you ain't like us, keep it pushing.
Veronica Jones, president of the Altadena Historical Society, you look like you wanted to add something to that.
No, I was just amen. Everything he was saying.
Auntie
Because,
Veronica.
we are going to be here, and we aren't going anywhere. And we want people here, and we need to have this kind of thing 100 years from now. It's the 100th day of the event. So we need it the 200th day. We need it the 2-year event. We need the 3-year event. And I want to be here on the 5-year event also, because it needs to stay in the eyes of the news and in the media and with our legislators. We need to have Altadena stamped right there on their desk every day.
Agreed. I want to switch gears a little bit and go to Jeffrey over at Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. Jeffrey, on Tuesday, the board voted 4-0 to direct $3 million from the county's budget to test residential properties that are both downwind and within 1 mile of the Eaton burn boundary. Talk to us about whether or not this may be too little too late. For folks who may be looking for legal remedies, talk to us about the mediation process and other legal remedies that folks in the community might be considering.
Yes, so as you heard Crystal talk about earlier, part of the process and part of the reason why we're here and all the information that's been disseminated here today and all the speakers just makes it clear that part of this process has to be for each and every one of you in this community to be able to tell your story, to make, in this case, Edison understand what it is that their actions have done. And I mentioned earlier that at the end of the litigation process is typically one of two things. It's typically a trial or a mediation. And we're all familiar, I think, with trials from personal experience or television. As Crystal said, we're a firm of over 1,000 lawyers that do exclusively trial-related work. So to the extent that we get to the point where we need to tell your story, we have been telling stories in trials every day of every year for 20 years, 30 years. And we would be honored to be able to tell your story in a trial if that is necessary. Most likely what happens in these cases, however, is that the cases will go to something called a mediation, which is not a trial, but it's an attempt to resolve the claims. And again, Crystal touched on this a little bit, but part of what we do in representing you is making sure that we have a personalized team that understands each and every one of your individualized stories and puts together a package of information that will go to the other side, go to Southern California Edison and say, hey, look, this is what it is that you did to these people, and here is what they believe is appropriate remedy for those wrongs. Then we will sit in a room with them at some point, and you will get to sit across from a Southern California Edison representative and their lawyers, and you will get to tell your story. And at the end of that process, us or any other lawyer you choose will get to argue with them for what you believe you're entitled to. And so even though that process may be a little ways off, we should be thinking about how we're going to be doing that now, right? The stories in this room are almost endless, and each one of you deserves to be able to tell that. Excuse me. And so as you go through this process, one of the important things I think we need to think about is making sure that we don't forget. We need to remember what it is that the fire has done to us and make sure that we're cataloging all of the work and all of the emotion that we've been through in dealing with these fires so that when we get to that mediation process or that trial, we can most effectively tell your story.
Jeffrey, just as a follow-up, and I'm hearing you say loud and clear that it's a good idea for us to document everything. And that's what the Altadena Historical Society is doing and will continue to do. I was just reading in the LA Times that lead is a heavy metal that's linked to some pretty serious health problems, including damage to the brain, damage to the nervous system, the digestive system, reproductive, cardiovascular issues. And that's according to the Environmental Protection Agency. And so in terms of what it takes to document, I'm hearing you say we should document, not just the condition of our homes, but we should also be documenting our health, no?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to the extent that you see any changes, I mean, changes are inevitable, obviously, and I'm glad we have therapists who are available to help and medical professionals who are available to help. Unfortunately, those are not my specialty, but to the extent that those changes happen in your lives, it is definitely important to document the impacts on you from the loss of your cherished possessions, the loss of your feelings of security, the loss of your homes, the loss of any, your health, your mental well-being. All of that has the possibility to be resolved and compensated in the litigation. Unfortunately, me and a judge and lots of other lawyers can't undo what's happened. And that's unfortunate, and I wish we could. And the best we can do in this situation is to try to find an amount of money that will make you feel like you've been heard and that what you've been through has now been compensated. And so, yes, as you go through the process of dealing with the rebuild and dealing with the damage to your properties and your lives, make sure that you do keep records of what it is that is happening to you, so that when you get to that day where you get to tell your story, you have that information and it's not lost because it's been a passage of time.
Dr. Williams, as somebody who documents folks' growth and conditions, talk to us about just some really easy ways, very practical ways that folks can document these sorts of things, because we're talking about folks who've lost everything. People who've lost computers, people who've lost files, people who are overwhelmed by just the idea that I need to document another thing. And so make it a little easier for us to wrap our arms around this.
So I think with technology, we have those devices in our hand, and most of us don't go anywhere without it. Right? You would be late to work trying to go back to get the phone, and you're going to have one on your desk when you get to work. But you need one in your hand while you're driving to listen to your music or to listen to this. Do a video diary. Film yourself. Film somebody. If you're uncomfortable, get somebody to say what you want to say and put it on film. Take pictures. And make sure that you archive those pictures. They'll have the date timestamp. They'll have all of those things. If you need to print them out because you need something to hold on to, because that's your last photo album. I lost all mine too. But being able to do that, right? So you want to be able to, even a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's said a long time ago. Believe it now. So that you can see it and be meticulous about, you can't take too many. So if you're a writer, journal, write it down, write the thoughts and feelings, write about, the devastation and you not being able to sleep night after night. Write how many times you had to go to the doctor. Go get your super bill from the doctor. Request, can I have a listing of how many times I've been here? You can request the documents from your mental health professional so that they can document that. Don't be afraid to say exactly how it is that you feel when you sit in that chair. And I know that it is intimidating to sit across from somebody and tell them the things that are going to make you cry, and to tell them of the ill and the hurt that you feel like has been done to you, but nobody can speak it for you. So get brave and speak your truth. Speak all of that, because somebody a mental health professional has to write it down for you. And you say, make sure when you write your notes, you put that in there, right? And have them put it in quotes about what the patient said, what the client said, what the individual person sitting across from me said, so that can be a living document about your experience. there was a last question. It was talking about the lead and the asbestos and things that are found and how you document about that. We talk a lot about people that lost their homes. We don't talk about the lucky losers, right? Those individuals whose homes didn't burn, and now they have to go back to a place where they no longer have their community. Of a family member that the insurance company rushed her back in her home because they said they would not pay. They said all of these things. She went there, got it cleaned, spent all this money, and as of yesterday, because they didn't do the proper testing to test for the asbestos, to test for lead, she's now out of her home for another 3 months after she just got settled again. So when we think about what needs to happen, it's for everybody. It's everybody that incurred a loss. And just because your home is still standing does not mean you are not lost and that you didn't incur a loss. So make sure we're thinking about everybody. And I can't think and understand mentally what it takes to drive into Altadena every day and how scary it is to close your door and be the only house on the block. Please call and check on those people. Drive by, check in with them. Because if you're the only house on the block, right, you almost think that you're the only one thinking about the fact that you're still there because everybody is elsewhere. So we got to tap in. Yeah.
By show of hands, how many folks here are the quote-unquote lucky losers? The lucky losers. All right? It's maybe about 20% of the room, lucky losers.
Let me define it, right? Because people are confused. There's
Sure.
no such thing as a lucky loser. But you're lucky that you have your house, but you're still lost a lot.
Yeah. Or not so lucky. There's something you wanted to say?
I'm good.
It's just amen?
Amen.
All right. I want to go back to Brandon Lamar, the president of NAACP Pasadena chapter. Speaking of soil testing, it's been reported that without adequate soil testing, contaminants caused by the fire, they remain undetected. They pose this risk to residents. We've heard it here. Failing to identify and remedy these fire-related contaminants may expose individuals to residual substances during the rebuilding. It may potentially jeopardize groundwater. And we have heard this story before. How should the people of Altadena and how should our fellow Americans interpret the federal government's break from 2 decades of tradition testing the soil? And how is NAACP meeting the moment?
So two words that I love is resistance and agitate. Here's what I mean by that. We just went through a fire, and I see distribution going on in Altadena. I see relief centers going on in Altadena. I see the county setting up shop in Altadena. The county is getting ready to open up Loma Alta Park again for youth to go up there. But also what I see is homes that debris still is sitting on. And one thing that I think we have to start doing is we have to look beyond what we can see and start looking at what our health will look like in the next 5 years. We're going to start seeing young people with cancer at a young age, higher rates. Because you know why? They're trying to clear out our schools so that our students, those schools can rebuild so our students can go back to those schools. So that our homes can be still there or rebuilt there. But I think one of the biggest things that we can do when we talk about the rebuild process is we have to not only test soil, but we have to make sure that we change out that soil. But it's amazing how we are having these conversations here, and soil testing has stopped from the county level on our end, but it hasn't in Palisades.
Can you say that again for the people in the back?
Absolutely. So it has stopped here on the county level. But I literally just spoke to a woman who was doing relief in Palisades, and the county and their city is actually testing the soil in Palisades. Not only that, but the streets are still blocked off in Palisades. Yesterday we had a report from the sheriff, and the sheriff told us here that they arrested 20 people last week from looting in Altadena. Why is that not happening in the Palisades? So, and I hate to compare, but there's a comparison there because our community has lost as well. And let me compare even bigger. It took Palisades 3 days to cover 10,000 acres. It took Altadena less than 4 hours to cover 10,000 acres. So I think what we have to do is agitate and resist when it comes to our local and county and state officials, when it comes to us showing up to meetings, because guess what? When it's time for us to show up, we don't show up, which is why Pasadena has went from 21% African Americans to now we're going lower than 6%, because you know why? We don't show up. When they making laws and talking about stuff and talking about agenda items that has us in their mind, on their mind, we do not show up. When you talk about our county board of supervisors, we don't show up. But we wonder why the population, let me tell you, the only population in Pasadena that has gone down is the African American population. So we need to agitate. And we need to start stepping up and show up and make sure, even if we have to rent buses and put people on them buses to show up, we have to show up, because that's how we're going to get that change to happen. You know why they're showing up in Palisades? Because they show up. They're going to call. It's not just about the money, but it's about you walking in there and say, we need in by numbers. Because you know what's greater than money? A vote. And that's what we have the power to do. If you don't have 50 cents, guess what you have? A vote. And that is what's going to change our community. So you want to talk about the lead and stuff that's happening? We need our community, we need our local officials, our county officials, our state and federal officials to take our health serious. Because if we don't, you talking about the rebuild process, in the next 5 years, half of us won't be here if we continue the rate that we're going on and breathing up. I got asthma, and I feel it every single time I go up there. I got a friend who goes up there to check his parents' house, and he gets sick every time he goes up there. This is the conversations that we really have to start having.
Thank you for that. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. This is our town hall here. 100 days and counting since the tragedy here in Altadena. And we are here with the people. Make no mistake about it. We are here with the people. There may be some people after this town hall going to another meeting. I read that the city council and that the LA County Supervisor Barger, are holding a joint meeting on the Eaton Fire recovery, on the Olympics, on housing. Jeffrey, in our remaining moments, I want to ask you to kick off this next round. What's next for survivors? What's next for wildfire survivors? And what's missing from the agenda for this joint meeting about the Eaton Fire that's taking place in about 15 minutes?
That's an excellent question. One of the things that I want to make sure that I stress as the lawyer who's bringing claims against SCE is that I think what's next for Eaton survivors here is this, right? Like meetings like this, coming together like this, standing with each other, supporting each other, and really taking care of you first. I know that there were a lot of lawyers in the area. I've heard stories of people driving streets right after the fire and handing business cards to people who were combing through the rubble or accosting people in supermarkets. And those stories raise my hackles. I can't even fathom. The litigation, as I said, will take some time. It should not be an added stressor to anybody. We're here to help when you're ready, but you should be taking care of all of this first. Figure out your insurance situation. If you need to help with that, you can get an independent adjuster to help you, or you can talk to the law firm that you've hired to answer some questions. Talk to a therapist. Do the things that you need to do in order to take care of what you need to take care of, and figure out the litigation piece later. If you're the type of person that needs to get that stress off your chest and hire somebody so that you know someone's watching out for you, then by all means do it right away. If you're not, don't add more to your plate. As far as the meeting that's going on, I think, I welcome the thoughts of other people on the panel, but it seems to me that this conversation is what's missing from that meeting.
Thank you for that. So in our remaining minutes, this is the lightning round, because we are live on the air right now, and we have a few more items we want to share with you. But quickly, if you give us about 60 seconds each, for many African Americans who built their lives, who built their businesses in historically black communities like Altadena, the combined loss of generational wealth and personal heirlooms is indescribable. Talk to us about what is feeding your worst fear and your wildest imagination about the future of Altadena, future of Eaton Canyon 100 days after. Veronica?
Okay. What I wake up every day thinking is that, what if we don't come back? What if I lose my community? I live on a street where most of the homes are there, but half the people are not there. What if they don't come back? I mean, that would be one of my worst nightmares. And another part I realize is, if we build back the same, we can't build back the same. We have to build back better. We have to be more fire resistant. We have to be more proactive in what we let our federal officials do in our communities. We have smaller parks on the west side. We have a smaller library. We have less trees. We have more electrical wires going through our neighborhoods. We can't let that happen. We can't. That's what got us here. So I just hope that as we build, that we do build back, and that as we build back, we make it better, and we hold those accountable that build those things, those organizations, SCE and the Board of Supervisors, hold them accountable to build our neighborhoods the same way they're built on the east side of Altadena.
Thank you for that. Dr. Williams?
I want to first start off by saying we can't fuel our fear. No, we can't fuel our fear. That's deficit-based, right? So as we live strength-based, hopefully we are fueling our hope. We are fueling our faith, because that's what we want to grow. We want that to be consumed like wildfire, so that we can do and feel better about who we are, what we have to walk into, and the promise, right? Everything that fire destroys is not bad, right? So we actually get to look for the silver lining. What is this? I was a renter, and we had that conversation a little earlier. I was a renter and closed escrow last Monday on the house that I rented for 17 years. There is hope. Right? We have to be able to find it. Organizations like Green Line, organizations like Neighborhood Housing Services, they are out there. We have to find them. We have to connect. So and I guess if there was a fear, and I'm not living in that, is that everybody that experiences fire that has been impacted, whether you watch it on TV or whether you hear and know somebody, or you are that somebody, that you would stop feeling a range of emotions. And the only thing that you would live in is sadness or anxiety, or what we like to go deeper and call depression, right? Feel a range of emotions. There's still something to be happy about. If you're sitting here listening to me and I'm looking at you, you made it out. Right? Feel a range of emotions. When you are happy, be happy, because the sadness will come back. But really sit in that, right? And allow yourself to feel some kind of joy. Yeah.
Brandon Lamar, NAACP Pasadena chapter president. What's feeding your worst fear, your wildest imagination?
I wake up with hope because we're continuously moving and trying to serve our people. I started the Dena Relief Drive, and the Dena Relief Drive has been the longest drive and assistance that has happened within our community since the day of the fire. And we're still moving. So I have hope. I have faith. But beyond that, it's not a fear, but it is if we don't move, then inevitable will happen. And here's what I mean by that. Governor Newsom passed an executive order for $2.5 billion for our community, but none of that money goes to helping families rebuild. It's all going to the salaries of the firemen and all the workers that have put in their time to cut out the fire. Not a dime of that money is going to us. Those are the questions that we have to start asking while we're smiling in front of these cameras and taking pictures and all this kind of stuff. We have to advocate for our community, because if we don't advocate, there will be no community for us to advocate for. So it's not a fear. It's a what if.
Thank you, Brandon.
So thank you again for allowing us to be here.
Thank you. We are live. I have a couple more minutes. Jeffrey, what's feeding your worst fear and your wildest imagination? About a minute.
I'm not sure I have much to add to what my esteemed panelists have added. I would say amen to all of that. I guess from my perspective, I think it's really about making sure that there's not a feeling of helplessness and hopelessness. My biggest fear is that people will stagnate and not do what they need to do to recover because of that overwhelming feeling of not having support. And it's wonderful to see this whole town hall come out and all the panelists and all the support that's available, because it gives me hope.
Thank you. And James Farr, the host of Conversations Live, Altadena Rising, in 30 seconds.
Doc, you know I know this clock better than anybody else up here, but what I will say is what we have not, and dead air does not work on radio, but we have to pay homage and honor the 18 that lost their lives in this fire. We talked a lot about the lucky losers, right? But let's not forget about those who have lost their lives. And then lastly, I'm so excited to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will be archiving this program and every episode of the Conversation Live Altadena Rising, so that it will not be forgotten and available for study and research for generations to come forward. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you for that. And thank you to Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers for helping sponsor this event. Want to bring back up Tavis Smiley to wrap us up, but I want to thank you. I'm Dr. Nicquetta, host of A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific.
One more time for Dr. Nicquetta. Y'all can do better than that. Come on, Dr. Corde. One more time for Dominique DiPrima. And one more time for all of these panelists. The first panel. Come on, y'all, give them some love. The first panel, the second panel.
Thank you.
You've heard it said. Just a couple minutes, 2 minutes left here before we wrap this live to the nation and to the world. You've heard it said a few times tonight, and I want to just make sure I underscore it one more again, as we say, that we are pleased at KBLA Talk 1580 to have the show of record. So we can't do town halls like this every week, but we can have a program every week that records and tracks and chronicles your resilience and this rebuild. We are honored to have James Farr as the host of this program. Again, Conversation Live, Altadena Rising every Saturday at 10 a.m., every Sunday at 12 p.m. A repeat. Please thank James Farr once again for hosting that conversation. This was a recent development, but I'm so pleased that James had a chance to announce it. We are delighted, Ms. Veronica, that your institution is going to chronicle not just this town hall. I thank God for all these cameras in the back and all the TV networks that came out to cover this today, the local networks. So I'm delighted to know that this conversation and every week on Conversation Live, Altadena Rising will be chronicled at the Historical Society so that years from now, when this Wakanda gets rebuilt, that folk will know that there was a black talk station that was on the front lines making sure that your stories were being told and that your voices were being heard, that your stories and voices indeed were being amplified. Finally, I want to thank once again Quinn Emanuel trial lawyers. As you've heard a few times today, there are all kinds of lawyers running here and there, making their case as they will. Some of them wolf in sheep's clothing, no question about that. But at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't partner with anybody until we've done our due diligence on who we're partnering with. So please thank Quinn Emanuel trial lawyers once again for joining with us today to sponsor this town hall. Crystal and Jeffrey, we thank you.
Thank you for listening to Altadena After the Fire. If you found this episode meaningful, please share it to help spread awareness. To support those affected by the Eaton Fire, consider donating to the Brotherhood Crusade's Wildfire Relief Fund at brotherhoodcrusade.org. Your contributions provide essential resources like food, medicine, and housing assistance to families in need. If you have updated information or a first-hand story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Contact details are in the show notes. Altadena After the Fire is an Urban One podcast. Executive producer and host, Kobe Tyner. Assistant producer, Jahi Whitehead. Director of podcasting, Dre Smith. Special thanks to the Urban One Cares team and our founder, Kathy Hughes. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.